The sky above Metropolis had seen gods fall through it before. Kryptonian pods screaming through atmosphere, boom tubes tearing reality like wet paper, speedsters ripping holes in time itself. The citizens of Superman's city had learned to look up with equal parts wonder and dread, because in a world where the impossible wore a cape and called itself hope, the next miracle was always one heartbeat from catastrophe. But on that Tuesday afternoon, when the clouds above Centennial Park split apart in a wound of white and red light that smelled of roses and ozone, even Metropolis held its breath. Because whatever was falling through that wound wasn't Kryptonian, it wasn't a god, it was 4 girls, trailing petals and fire and shadows, and tumbling from a world the multiverse had never catalogued into a city that stood as monument to everything humanity wished it could become. Ruby Rose hit the grass first. She came apart in a burst of crimson petals. Petal burst activating on pure instinct, and reassembled 3 feet above the ground. Crescent rose already unfolding in her hands with the mechanical precision of muscle memory, deeper than thought. The massive scythe locked into combat configuration, its curved blade catching Metropolis sunlight that felt warmer, heavier, more golden than any sun she'd ever stood beneath. Her boots touched earth and she was already scanning, silver eyes sweeping a park that looked like something from a painting. Perfect grass, sculpted trees, a skyline of glass and chrome that made Atlas look like a mining camp. Weiss landed on a glyph. The pale blue sigil materialized beneath her feet 2 seconds before impact, Merton Astor drawn and positioned in a fencing stance that would have earned a perfect score at any Atlesian academy. Her white hair caught the wind, and the dust chambers in her rapier's revolving cylinder glowed faintly. Fire, ice, lightning, gravity, all accounted for. All finite. She registered that thought with the clinical precision of a woman who'd learned to count every resource after watching an empire built on abundance crumble to nothing. Blake materialized from shadow. Gamble's shroud's ribbon was already wrapped around her forearm, the weapon in cleaver configuration, her amber eyes slit-pupilled and hunting for threats in every direction simultaneously. Her bow was in place, hiding the cat ears that marked her as faunus. She hated that her first instinct in a new world was still to hide. But instinct had kept her alive through Adam, through Salem, through the ever-after's madness, and she would not apologize for survival. Yang crashed. No grace, no glyph, just raw kinetic arrival, Ember Celica absorbing the impact, her gauntlets flaring gold as the shock traveled up her arms and fed into the furnace of her semblance. She stood up grinning, lilac eyes bright, blonde hair cascading around her shoulders like a challenge to anything watching. "Okay," she said, cracking her neck. "That's a new one." Ruby lowered Crescent Rose by a fraction. "Everyone okay?" Sound off. Intact, dust reserves unchanged. Weiss, precise. Clear on all sides. No Grimm signatures. Blake, cautious. "I'm great. That landing was actually fun." Yang. Ruby exhaled. The relief lasted exactly 1 second before she processed what she was seeing beyond the park. The city was enormous, bigger than Vale, bigger than Atlas, stretching in every direction with an architectural confidence that spoke of a civilization that had never been hunted by monsters made of shadow and hatred. Cars moved on streets below, people walked without weapons, children played in the open air without walls or huntsmen standing guard. No Grimm, anywhere. The absence hit her like a physical thing. On Remnant, negativity attracted darkness. Fear made monsters real. Every city existed inside walls because the world outside was endless teeth. But here, people lived as if darkness were metaphorical. Something you read about, debated in philosophy classes, watched on screens. Not something that could smell your despair and tear you apart for feeling it. "Where are we?" Blake asked, and her voice held the careful control of someone refusing to let hope in because hope had lied before. Ruby opened her mouth to answer. She never got the chance. The sonic boom came first, a crack of displaced air that made all four of them flinch into combat stances. And then he was there, hovering, 10 feet above the grass, cape catching wind that seemed to exist solely to make him look like the word hope had taken physical form and decided to wear primary colors. The S-shield on his chest blazed in sunlight. His eyes were blue and ancient and kind in a way that reminded RWBY, with a pang so sharp it nearly broke her, of her mother. Superman. She didn't know his name yet. None of them did. But every huntress in that park understood, on an instinctive level that transcended universes, that they were looking at something Remnant had never produced. Not a huntsman, not a soldier, not a warrior who fought because the alternative was extinction. This was someone who could have ruled the world and chose to save it instead. Someone whose power was so vast that his restraint was more impressive than his strength. He descended slowly, non-threatening, hands visible, posture open, the body language of someone accustomed to terrifying people by accident and spending considerable effort not to. "You're not from here," he said. His voice carried without effort, warm and steady. "And that rift you came through just set off every sensor on the Watchtower." A pause, the slightest smile. "Welcome to Earth. I'm Superman. And I think we should talk before my friend in Gotham decides to have this conversation his way. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night." Ruby Rose looked up at the floating man who radiated safety the way the sun radiated warmth. And she did something she hadn't done since falling through the void beneath Atlas. She lowered her weapon completely. The Watchtower's observation deck offered a view that made Amity Coliseum look like a toy. Earth curved below them, blue and white and impossibly alive, and Ruby couldn't stop staring at it because Remnant had never looked like this from above. Remnant from orbit was a world scarred by darkness, continents shaped by grim migration patterns, cities clustered behind walls like frightened animals. This world sprawled with the confidence of a civilization that had never considered extinction a daily possibility. "4 individuals," Batman said, and his voice filled the room the way a blade fills a wound. Precisely, completely, leaving no space for anything else. Unknown origin, unknown capabilities, arriving through a dimensional breach with energy signatures that don't match any catalogued multiverse frequency. He stood at the tactical display, cowl up, white lenses reflecting data streams that Weiss recognized as threat assessment matrices because her father had used similar systems to evaluate business rivals. "And you want to give them a tour?" "I want to give them a chance, Bruce." Superman stood with his arms folded, still radiating that maddening calm that Yang found simultaneously reassuring and suspicious. Nobody was that relaxed. Nobody real. They're scared, they're young, and the blonde one's gauntlets are mechanically fascinating, but they're not weapons of mass destruction. "Hey," Yang bristled. "Imbecilica has leveled buildings." "He knows," Blake murmured. "So he's reading your body language and minimizing your threat profile so his partner relaxes his tactical posture." Batman's lenses turned toward Blake. A pause that lasted exactly long enough to communicate respect. "Faunus. That's what you called yourself. Animal trait integration, your ears under that bow. Is that genetic engineering or natural evolution?" Blake's hand twitched toward her bow. She forced it down. "Natural, and not relevant to why we're here." "Everything is relevant to why you're here until I determine otherwise." "Bruce." A new voice, and the authority in it made even Batman's jaw tighten by a fraction. Wonder Woman entered the observation deck in full armor. Tiara, bracelets, the lasso of truth coiled at her hip glowing faintly gold. She moved like a predator, comfortable enough in her power to appear graceful. Again, Ruby recognized the walk because Professor Goodwitch had moved exactly the same way. Controlled lethality dressed in poise. They are warriors. I can see it in how they stand, how they watch doorways, how they position themselves to cover each other's blind spots. They were not trained for ceremony. They were trained for survival. Diana's eyes settled on Ruby, assessed, found something that made the Amazon princess tilt her head with what Ruby would later learn was rare curiosity. "You lead them," Diana said. "Not a question." "Yes, ma'am." "You're the youngest." "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" Ruby thought about it. Thought about Beacon falling, about Penny dying, about standing on the edge of the ever-afters reality and choosing to come back, because giving up was a luxury her mother never took. "Because I decided to, even they decided to let me." Weiss stepped forward. "I should provide tactical context, since Detective..." She glanced at Batman. "Since your colleague clearly wants threat data before trust, we're huntresses, trained at Beacon Academy on Remnant to fight creatures called Grimm, manifestations of darkness drawn to negative emotion. Our weapons are custom-built. Our aura is a projection of our soul that grants enhanced durability and unique abilities called semblances. And the crystalline substance powering several of our weapon functions is called dust." She held up a small vial of red dust. "Let it catch the Watchtower's light. Elemental energy in solid form, we have a finite supply. It cannot be manufactured here. When it's gone, it's gone." Batman's hand moved toward his belt, not reaching for a weapon, reaching for a scanner, and the distinction mattered. "May I?" Weiss hesitated, then extended the vial. "Careful. Fire dust is volatile." The Bat computer-linked scanner hummed. Batman studied the readout, and for the first time, something in his posture shifted from interrogation to interest. Crystallized elemental energy with no analog in any Earth-based or Kryptonian database. Not magical in origin. He glanced at the readout again. Or if it is, it's a magical tradition completely outside our taxonomic framework. "It's not magic," Weiss said firmly. "It's science we understood well enough to industrialize. On your world." Batman set the vial down with exaggerated care. "Here, it reads as anomalous, which means it's going to attract attention from people who collect anomalies." His gaze swept the four of them. "Luthor, Waller, others." "Who are..." Ruby began. Problems," Superman said quietly. "Problems for later. Right now, I want to understand something." He crouched slightly, bringing himself closer to Ruby's eye level, and the gesture was so deliberately non-threatening that Yang's protective instincts flared and then, confusingly, settled. "You said you fight creatures born from negative emotion, darkness that hunts fear and despair." "Grimm," Ruby confirmed. "They're drawn to it. The more afraid a population is, the more Grimm swarm. Cities survive by maintaining hope, by keeping people calm, protected, believing things will be okay." Superman looked at Batman. Something passed between them, a conversation conducted entirely in silence, built on years of partnership and philosophical opposition. Batman's expression didn't change, but his shoulders dropped by a millimeter. "You understand," Superman said to Ruby, and his voice carried a weight that confused her until she realized it was recognition. "You understand what a symbol does?" "Clark." Batman's warning was quiet. "She fights darkness that feeds on despair, Bruce. She leads by maintaining hope in a world where hopelessness is literally lethal. She's not a threat." Superman stood. "She's a proof of concept." Wonder Woman unsheathed her sword. All four huntresses tensed. Diana smiled, flipped the blade, and offered the handle to Ruby. "In Themyscira, we greet fellow warriors by offering our weapon. It means we trust you enough to be unarmed in your presence." She waited. "Will you return the gesture?" Ruby looked at Crescent Rose. Her baby, her masterpiece, the weapon she designed at 15 and carried through every nightmare since. So she collapsed it, held it out. Diana took the scythe with the reverence of a woman who understood that weapons were extensions of the soul. She tested the weight, examined the mechanisms, and her smile widened. You built this yourself. Every piece. Hephaestus would weep with joy. Diana returned the weapon. I like them, Clark. Bruce, stop scowling. Batman did not stop scowling. I want them monitored, quartered, and I want to run a full analysis on every piece of technology they're carrying before anyone uses the word ally. Yang's eyes flickered red. We're not prisoners. No, Batman agreed. Prisoners don't get the observation deck view. Consider this hospitality with conditions. He turned to leave, cape sweeping behind him. Paused at the door. The Faunus. Blake. You recognized tactical manipulation in real time. The former intelligence operative. Blake met his gaze. Former revolutionary. Batman almost smiled. Almost. We'll talk. He disappeared into shadow, and RWBY had the unsettling realization that in a space station orbiting Earth, somehow, the man without powers had been the most dangerous person in the room. Gotham hit Blake like a memory she hadn't consented to recall. The rain was the first thing, constant, gray, turning every surface into a mirror that reflected neon signs advertising things nobody needed to people who couldn't afford them. The architecture pressed inward, buildings leaning toward each other like conspirators sharing secrets, and the alleys between them were dark in a way that had nothing to do with absent streetlights and everything to do with a city that had internalized its own corruption so thoroughly that shadows were a feature, not a flaw. She'd left the Watchtower 3 hours ago. Batman had arranged temporary quarters in Metropolis, a modest apartment funded through Wayne Enterprises' humanitarian outreach. Which Blake suspected was Batman's personal money laundered through so many charitable fronts, it would take a forensic accountant a decade to trace. RWBY had agreed to the arrangement. Weiss was already cataloging their dust reserves with the grim efficiency of a quartermaster expecting siege. Yang was exploring Metropolis with the specific enthusiasm of someone determined to enjoy a foreign city by punching her way through its restaurant scene. Blake had said she needed air. She needed information. And information lived in the dark places where people with power preferred not to look. Gotham's East End was exactly what she expected, because every civilization built the same neighborhoods for the people it wanted to forget. Cheap housing stacked on cheaper housing. Streets where the police drove through without stopping. Faunus? No. They didn't have faunus here. They had something else. She'd seen it in the Watchtower's database when Batman wasn't watching her look. Metahumans. People born different, changed by accident, transformed by science or magic or cosmic lottery, and feared by the ordinary population with a hatred so familiar it made her teeth ache. She perched on a gargoyle. Gotham had gargoyles, actual stone gargoyles, as if the city's architect had wanted to make the aesthetic subtext text, and watched a drug deal proceed in the alley below. 3 men, 1 buyer, 2 sellers. The product was something called venom in a diluted street form, a compound that enhanced strength temporarily and destroyed the user permanently. Blake had seen dust addiction on Remnant. The mechanics were identical. Their power sold in small doses to people too desperate to calculate the cost. She dropped without sound. Gamble Shroud's ribbon wrapped the first seller's wrist before he could reach his gun. Blake's shadow clone absorbed the second seller's panicked knife thrust, dissolving into black mist as the real Blake materialized behind him and drove an elbow into the nerve cluster between his shoulders. He crumpled. The buyer ran. She let him. The first seller dangled from the fire escape where her ribbon had hoisted him, spinning slowly, eyes wild. What are you? You're not Bet. You're not one of his... No, Blake said. I'm not. Where does the venom supply chain start? I can't. They'll kill me. The people buying this will die slower. Blake tightened the ribbon. Not enough to hurt, enough to remind. I've brought down organizations bigger than whatever you're protecting. I did it with less patience than I have tonight. Talk. He talked. The information was fragmentary, but useful. A warehouse in the Narrows, a name she didn't recognize yet, a connection to something called Blackgate that was apparently a prison. Blake filed it all, lowered the man to the ground, zip-tied him to a dumpster with supplies she'd acquired from a hardware store with money Superman had provided, and vanished back into the rain. She was 3 rooftops away when the voice came from shadows that shouldn't have contained anything human. Efficient, but you left evidence of your methodology. Blake spun. Gamble's shroud materialized in her hands. Her shadow clone flickered into existence beside her, a dark mirror poised to intercept. The Nightwing stepped out of the dark, with his hands raised and a grin that seemed medically incapable of taking anything seriously. The blue bird symbol on his chest caught a sliver of neon light. He moved like water, easy, flowing, every step a potential combat maneuver disguised as casual strolling. Relax, I'm friendly, mostly. He leaned against a ventilation unit. Dick Grayson. Nightwing. Batman's, well, it's complicated. He sent me to keep tabs on you, which I'm now blowing by introducing myself because surveillance is boring and you're clearly not a tourist. Blake didn't lower her weapon. He's having you follow me. He's having people follow all 4 of you. Don't take it personally. He has contingency plans for Superman. You 4 are Tuesday. Nightwing's grin softened into something more genuine. But I volunteered for you specifically because I read your file, the one you let him access anyway, and I know a freedom fighter when I see one. Former revolutionary, right? Fighting systemic oppression of a marginalized population? Blake's grip tightened. The White Fang. I don't know what that is, but I know this. You're in Gotham for 3 hours, and you've already started dismantling street-level crime infrastructure. Nightwing pushed off the ventilation unit. That's not exploration, that's operational habit. You can't help yourself. Someone should help them. Blake gestured toward the street below. No one else is. That's not true. It's just that help in Gotham looks different than you're used to. Nightwing extended a hand. Come with me. I want to show you something that'll change how you see this city. Yes, and if you still want to wage a one-woman war on Gotham's underworld afterward, at least you'll know which targets actually matter. Blake looked at his hand. Thought about Adam, who had extended his hand once and pulled her into a war that cost everything. Thought about Sun, who had extended his hand and asked nothing except to walk beside her. Thought about Yang, who had lost a hand entirely and still reached out. She didn't take Nightwing's hand, but she followed him. Meanwhile, 14 blocks away, Yang Xiao Long discovered that Gotham bars were not like Remnant bars. Remnant bars expected huntsmen. They built furniture to be broken and replaced it with line items in insurance budgets that specifically categorized aura-enhanced property damage. Gotham bars expected something worse. Regular humans pushed past every reasonable limit, self-medicating trauma in a city that manufactured it industrially. The patrons were harder, the bartenders were meaner, and the man who grabbed Yang's arm when she asked for directions to a decent noodle place was either very brave or catastrophically uninformed. Pretty girl like you shouldn't be in this part of town, he said, and his grip was strong for a human without aura. Yang looked at the hand on her arm, looked at the man, smiled the smile that Blake called her property damage incoming expression. I'm going to give you one chance to let go, Yang said pleasantly. Because where I come from, the last guy who grabbed me without asking lost a mech suit and his dignity and most of his teeth. He didn't let go. Ember Celica deployed with a mechanical snap that silenced the bar, golden gauntlets encasing Yang's forearms. And the man let go very quickly after that. But the damage was done. Not physical, not yet. because the sound of those gauntlets deploying carried through Gotham's night like a dinner bell, and in a city of predators and hunters, dinner bells drew attention. 3 blocks away, a figure in a red helmet paused on a rooftop, turned toward the sound, and thought, interesting. The House of Mystery existed on the corner of a street that shouldn't have been there, behind a door that definitely hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. Inside a building that Weiss Schnee's Atlesian education told her was architecturally impossible, and her huntress training told her was a trap. She went in anyway because the alternative was standing in the rain outside a Metropolis occult bookstore where a man in a trench coat had said, with the exhausted authority of someone who'd seen too much reality to be impressed by any of it, "You've got something dead following you around, love. 3 somethings. Let's have a look before they attract the wrong sort of attention." John Constantine walked ahead of her through the House of Mystery's shifting corridors, trailing cigarette smoke that hung in the air as if afraid to dissipate. His coat was dirty. His tie was loose. He looked like a man who'd lost a fight with sobriety decades ago and was content with the outcome. But his eyes tracked things in the peripheral spaces between shadows and light, things Weiss couldn't see, and his hands moved with the absent precision of someone whose muscle memory included warding gestures the way hers included parrying stances. "Glyphs," he said without turning around. "That's what your posh friend called them. The Bat's files are thorough, I'll give him that. Says you can create platforms, manipulate gravity, accelerate time locally, and summon spectral constructs of things you've defeated." He stopped walking, turned. His eyes were very, very focused. "That last bit, the summoning. Show me." Weiss drew Mertenasta. The rapier's familiar weight centered her in this impossible space, and she reached inward, past aura, past training, into the cold white core of Schnee hereditary power, where defeated enemies waited as echoes frozen in her soul's architecture. She chose carefully. The Arma Gigas was too large for indoors, the Boa Batas too aggressive. She settled on a single Beowulf, a grim foot soldier, wolf-shaped nightmare of black bone and red eyes, rendered in spectral ice blue light. It materialized on the glyph beneath her feet, translucent, beautiful in the terrible way that weapons are beautiful. It moved with the Beowulf's predatory lope, crimson eyes dimmed to pale blue, its movements perfectly responsive to Weiss's will. Constantine's cigarette fell out of his mouth. "Bloody hell," he whispered. "That's not a construct. That's a soul. It's a Grimm. They don't have souls. On your world, maybe. But you're not on your world, are you?" Constantine circled the spectral Beowulf slowly, pulling a small mirror from his coat pocket and angling it to catch the summons reflection. In the mirror, Weiss saw something she hadn't expected. The Beowulf's image flickered, and behind the blue spectral light, she glimpsed darkness. Pure, absolute. Not the clean elemental darkness of a shadow, but something with weight and hunger and patience. "Your semblance," Constantine said carefully, "captures the essence of what you've killed and binds it to your will. On Remnant, where Grimm are constructs of external darkness, that's fine. Bit creepy, but fine. Here, darkness has a postal address. Several, in fact. And every time you summon one of these, you're not just creating a combat tool. You're opening a very small, very brief window between your soul and something that would very much like to climb through." Weiss dismissed the Beowulf. Her heart was hammering, and she hated that it was hammering. She hadn't been afraid of her own power since the concert in Atlas when the Borbatusk had appeared, and her father's disappointment had been sharper than any claw. "Are you saying I can't use my semblance?" "I'm saying you need supervision when you do. Lucky for you." He gestured, and a door appeared in the wall that hadn't had a door before. Through it, Weiss saw a vast library. "I know someone who's a much better teacher than I am. I mostly just blow things up and feel guilty about it after." Zatanna Zatara was waiting in the library, sitting cross-legged on a floating book that hovered 6 feet above a reading desk covered in open volumes. She wore performance clothes, fishnets, top hat, tailcoat that should have looked ridiculous in an occult library, and instead looked exactly right, as if the aesthetic was part of the magic, and the magic was part of her. Weiss Schnee. Zatanna dropped from the book and landed without sound. I've been watching your energy signature since you arrived in this dimension. You're fascinating. I've been told I'm a problem. Constantine tells everyone they're a problem. It's his version of flirting. Zatanna extended her hand. May I? I want to feel your aura directly. What you call soul projection, we call something very different, and I need to understand the translation before I can help you. Weiss allowed the contact. Zatanna's fingers closed around her wrist, and Weiss felt something brush against her aura from the outside. Not aggressive, not invasive, but curious. Like a librarian's fingers running along book spines, reading titles by touch. Zatanna's eyes closed, opened, widened. Oh, Zatanna breathed. Oh, that's remarkable. Your entire body is suffused with your soul's energy, not channeled through a focus, not invoked through words or symbols. It's always on. Your soul is your armor, your weapon, your healing factor. That's not magic. That's something older than magic. It's aura. Everyone on Remnant has it. Most people just never have it unlocked. Unlocked. Zatanna released her wrist slowly. That implies it's latent in your species. A soul-based defense system that evolved because your world has creatures that hunt emotional energy. She looked at Constantine. John, are you thinking what I'm thinking? That their entire species evolved the metaphysical equivalent of an immune response to a predatory darkness. Constantine lit a new cigarette. Yeah, and now one of them is running around with a semblance that captures and contains fragments of that darkness. In a universe where darkness fights back. I can control it, Weiss said, and the sharpness in her voice was the sharpness of a woman who had spent her entire life being told her power was dangerous by people who wanted to control it. Her father, Ironwood, now these strangers in their impossible house. I've controlled it through a war, through the fall of 2 kingdoms, through the literal afterlife. And I don't need supervision, I need resources. Constantine and Zatanna exchanged a look. It was the look of 2 people who'd watched powerful individuals declare control over forces that eventually consumed them. They'd watched it often enough to recognize the script. You'll get both, Zatanna said gently. And Weiss, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to make sure the things you summon don't grow teeth when you're not looking. In this universe, the Dark has a name. Several names, and the biggest one, Darkseid. He has a way of finding weapons he didn't know he wanted. The name meant nothing to Weiss, yet it would, across the dimensional membrane of the House of Mystery, in a reality that functioned on different rules than Remnant had ever prepared them for. Weiss Schnee began the careful and terrifying work of understanding that her greatest power might be, in this specific universe, her greatest vulnerability. And in the House of Mystery's deeper chambers, where John Constantine kept the things he didn't want anyone else to find, a mirror that reflected nothing began, very slowly, to fog. Yang's dreams had always run hot. Nightmares about Adam's blade. Memories of her mother leaving, rendered in fever, red and burning gold. The phantom sensation of a missing arm she'd long since replaced with Atlas engineering and sheer refusal to be diminished. She'd learned to sleep through the heat, let it wash over her, ride the anger like a wave that crested and broke against the shore of her control. But this dream was different. She stood in a void that pulsed red. Not the red of fire. She knew fire, loved fire, was fire. This was the red of something raw. A red that predated flame, predated heat, existed before the universe had decided what color rage should be and had simply been rage, formless and absolute, and so vast that standing in its presence made Yang feel, for the first time in her life, small. Not physically small, emotionally small, As if every fight she'd ever had, every punch she'd thrown, every time she'd let Byrne take the wheel and ridden the escalation of absorbed damage into devastating counterattacks, all of it was a candle held up against the surface of a star. You burn beautifully. The voice came from everywhere. It wasn't words, it was the sensation of a fist connecting with a face, the crack of bone, the release of hitting something that deserved to be hit. It was the feeling Yang chased in every fight, that perfect, terrible moment when control dissolved and power surged and nothing existed except impact. You've been burning your whole life, burning for your mother who left, burning for your partner who was taken, burning for a world that asked you to fight before you were old enough to understand what you'd lose. So when they put you back together each time, they dampened you, tempered you, called it growth, called it healing. Yang tried to speak. Her mouth opened, but what came out wasn't words. It was heat. They were wrong. You don't need tempering, you need fuel. She woke up in the Metropolis apartment with her hair on fire. Not metaphorically, physically. Golden flames licked along blonde strands, and her eyes in the bathroom mirror were red. Not the lilac to red shift of her semblance activating, but a deeper crimson, the color of arterial blood, pulsing with a rhythm that matched something far away and approaching fast. Yang? Ruby's voice, sleepy, concerned. Your aura's flaring. I can feel it from the other room. Fine, Yang managed. Bad dream. Go back to sleep. She gripped the sink until the porcelain cracked under her fingers and focused on breathing. In, out, control. She'd mastered this. She'd spent months after losing her arm learning to channel Byrne without losing herself in it, learning that strength without control was just destruction, learning that her mother's legacy of abandonment and rage was not her destiny. The red faded. Lilac returned. Her hair stopped burning, but something lingered. A warmth in her chest that hadn't been there before. A whisper at the edge of hearing that sounded like the Void's voice, patient and certain, saying, "I'll find you." 6,000 light-years away, in Sector 2814's monitoring station, a Green Lantern named Hal Jordan frowned at a sensor readout that shouldn't have been possible. "Ring, confirm that reading." Confirmed. An anomalous emotional spectrum signature detected on Earth. Sector 2814. Classification, Rage. Sub-classification, Absorption-based amplification. The signature is unlike standard Red Lantern energy. It appears to be organic, a biological system that converts received kinetic and emotional force into proportionally escalating offensive capability. So it gets stronger the more you hit it. Affirmatively. Additionally, the signature's rage component is not externally generated. It is internally sourced from genuine, deeply personal trauma that has been processed but not extinguished. This creates a feedback loop compatible with Red Lantern ring bonding. Hal's fist tightened around his ring. He'd seen what Red Lantern rings did to people. Atrocitus's core recruited through suffering. The ring found beings with justifiable and soul-deep rage and amplified it until nothing remained except anger and the vomiting of napalm-hot blood. It was a violation dressed as empowerment, and once a red ring bonded, removing it stopped the wearer's heart. Ring. Is there a Red Lantern ring currently moving toward Earth? Scanning. One ring detected in transit. Origin, Sector 666. Easmore. Estimated arrival, 47 hours. Contact the Watchtower, priority alert, and ring. Hal was already constructing a flight platform, green light solidifying beneath his feet. Pull everything we have on those four-dimensional refugees Batman's been cataloging. I want to know which one is generating this signature. The signature corresponds to the individual designated Yang Xiao Long. Age 19. Combat classification. Close quarters brawler with kinetic energy absorption semblance. A semblance that absorbs damage and converts it to power. Hal launched himself into space, emerald contrail burning behind him, and a red ring is coming for someone whose power literally feeds on getting hit harder. The implications settled in his stomach like lead. That's not a recruit, that's a perfect host. Yang didn't tell the team about the dream. She should have. She knew she should have. RWBY would have listened with that concerned leader expression that was somehow more effective than any authority figure's orders. Weiss would have analyzed it with strategic precision. Blake would have recognized the pattern. Seduction through validation, power offered as liberation, the same playbook Adam Taurus had used on an entire movement. But Yang didn't tell them because the dream hadn't felt like a threat. It had felt like recognition, like something in the universe had finally looked at the furnace inside her and said yes instead of careful, and she was so tired of careful. Tired of modulating, controlling, dampening, managing her rage as if it were a disease instead of the appropriate response to a life that had taken her mother, her arm, her innocence, and her partner's safety, and asked her to smile through the rubble. She went for a walk instead. Metropolis at night was nothing like Gotham, bright, clean, hopeful in a way that felt slightly artificial after Blake's descriptions of the city across the bay. Yang walked until she found a gym. A boxing gym, specifically, with heavy bags and speed bags and a ring where two men were sparring with the sloppy enthusiasm of amateurs who loved the sport more than they'd ever master it. And she watched, the itch in her fists built. Byrne whispered, "Hit something. You look like you need a round." The man was large. Kind face, scarred knuckles, the build of a retired fighter running a community gym on passion and minimal funding. He offered her raps. She almost laughed. Ember Celica was designed to channel forces that would shatter every bone in an unprotected hand. But she took the raps because the gesture was gentle, and Yang had always been defenseless against gentleness. She hit the heavy bag, pulled her punches to approximately 2% of her capacity. The bag swung. She hit it again. The rhythm settled into her like music, and for 30 seconds, the red whisper in her chest went quiet. Then her scroll buzzed. Except it wasn't her scroll. Scrolls didn't work across dimensional barriers, and it was the Watchtower communicator Batman had issued them, and the message was from Superman. Yang. "I need you at the Watchtower. Bring your team. A Green Lantern is coming to talk about something headed your way, and I'd rather you hear it from friends than discover it alone. It's about your power. Please hurry." Yang looked at the heavy bag, at her wrapped fists, at the faint red glow pulsing beneath her skin like a second heartbeat that wasn't hers. "I'll find you," the void whispered. "Yeah," Yang murmured, pulling the wraps off. "I know. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night." She called RWBY. The team assembled, and 46 hours away, burning through the void between stars like a coal flung from hell's furnace, a red ring screamed toward Earth with a hunger that had found, at last, the perfect mouth to feed. The Watchtower briefing lasted 40 minutes. Hal Jordan explained the emotional spectrum with the clipped efficiency of a soldier delivering threat assessment to civilians, and Yang sat through every word with her arms folded and her jaw tight, and the red warmth in her chest pulsing in time with descriptions of rage given form and function. A red lantern ring. Forged on Ismol by Atrocitus, powered by fury so pure it replaced blood with burning plasma, bonded to hosts whose anger was justified and deep and exploitable. Once it found her, once it slid onto her finger, her heart would stop beating on its own. The ring would beat it for her, and removing it would kill her unless a blue lantern, hope incarnate, intervened. "So my options," Yang said when he finished, "are let an alien rage parasite attach itself to me permanently, and/or run from my own anger for the rest of my life." "There's a third option," Hal said. "We intercept the ring before it reaches you. Contain it, I've done it before. And if you can't? Hal didn't answer, which was answer enough. Ruby's hand found Yang's shoulder. Squeezed. No words. They'd fought a god of darkness together, fallen through the fabric of reality together, rebuilt themselves from nothing in the ever after together. A ring powered by rage was terrifying, but it was terrifying the way all of their problems had been terrifying, enormous, until you faced it beside the people who refused to let you face it alone. We handle it, Ruby said. Together. That's what we do. The briefing ended. The team dispersed to process, and that was when the DC Universe reminded them that cosmic threats were not the only predators hunting in this world. The human ones were quieter, better dressed, and infinitely more patient. Lex Luthor's invitation arrived via a LexCorp courier drone that navigated Watchtower security protocols with an ease that made Batman's eye twitch behind his cowl. The drone carried 4 envelopes, handwritten, cream cardstock, monogrammed with a cursive L that communicated wealth the way a gun communicated intent. Each envelope contained a personalized letter. Weiss's letter praised her industrial heritage, compared the Schnee Dust Company's market dominance to LexCorp's technological empire, and offered full laboratory access to analyze and potentially synthesize dust using LexCorp's molecular fabrication capabilities. It mentioned, casually, that LexCorp held 17 patents on crystallized energy storage that might provide a foundation for dust replication. Ruby's letter expressed admiration for her leadership of a combat team at such a young age, drew parallels to Luthor's own early genius, and offered funding for any heroic initiative she wished to pursue, independent of the Justice League's oversight and philosophical restrictions. Blake's letter was shorter. It contained a dossier on metahuman discrimination legislation currently stalled in the United States Congress, a list of Gotham politicians who had voted against faunus-analogous protections, and a single sentence. I believe we share an interest in systemic change that those in capes are too comfortable to pursue. Yang's letter offered combat training facilities, kinetic energy research partnerships, and a postscript that read, I understand the Red Lantern situation. I have resources that could help. Superman won't tell you about them because Superman believes hope is a strategy. I believe in preparation. He's good, Blake said quietly, reading hers for the 3rd time. He knows exactly which buttons to press. He's a villain, Ruby countered. He's a businessman. Weiss's voice was neutral in a way that concerned Ruby more than disagreement would have. And he's offering something no one else has, a way to replenish our dust supply. Ruby, we have 11 vials of fire dust, 8 of ice, 6 of lightning, 3 of gravity, and 2 of hard light. When those are gone, our weapons are reduced to base mechanical function. Crescent Rose becomes a scythe, Myrtenaster becomes a sword, and Basilica become gauntlets. We lose elemental versatility entirely. We don't make deals with people Batman calls dangerous. Batman calls everyone dangerous. He has a contingency plan to kill Superman. Weiss held up her letter. I'm not saying we accept. I'm saying we don't reject resources based on the moral assessment of a man who dresses as a bat. The argument was interrupted by a second arrival, and this one didn't bother with envelopes. Amanda Waller appeared on the Watchtower's communication screen with the authorization codes of the United States government behind her, and the expression of a woman who considered authorization codes a polite formality she extended to people she hadn't yet decided to destroy. She was heavyset, iron-eyed, and radiated authority the way Yang radiated heat, constantly, unavoidably, as a fundamental property of existence. From Team RWBY. She pronounced it correctly, which meant she'd done research. You are currently undocumented extra-dimensional entities on United States soil. You have no legal status, no citizenship, no rights under any existing framework. The Justice League has offered you hospitality, but the Justice League is not a government. They cannot grant asylum, they cannot provide legal protection, and they cannot stop me from classifying you as extra-dimensional combatants and activating protocols that would make your lives considerably more structured. You're threatening us, Yang said flatly. I'm informing you. Threats come later if information doesn't work. Waller's gaze swept all four of them with the evaluative precision of someone who'd spent a career turning dangerous people into useful ones. I run a program called Task Force X. It performs operations too dangerous or politically sensitive for conventional military assets. Your skill sets, demolitions expert, intelligence operative, strategic summoner, kinetic powerhouse, fit requirements I currently have open. 12 missions. After completion, full legal citizenship, resource support, and government protection from entities like Luthor, who see you as acquisition targets. 12 missions doing what? Blake asked. What needs doing? Details are classified until you accept. That's not an offer, Ruby said. That's a draft notice with a smile. I don't smile, Miss Rose. It's inefficient. Waller leaned forward. You have 72 hours to respond. After that, your legal status becomes my decision rather than your choice. Waller out. The screen went dark, and silence settled over Team RWB like ash after an explosion. Ruby looked at her teammates, Weiss calculating resource implications, Blake analyzing political leverage, Yang simmering with an anger that now had a cosmic resonance she couldn't ignore, and felt something she hadn't felt since Salem's forces had overrun Atlas. The ground shifting beneath her. On Remnant, the enemies had been clear. Grimm were darkness. Salem was evil. The lines were drawn in black and white, literally. Light and shadow, hope and despair, the simple, brutal math of survival against extinction. But here, in this universe of gods and mortals, the most dangerous threats wore suits and held government positions and offered help that was indistinguishable from chains. We don't split up, Ruby said firmly. We don't take deals separately. Whatever we decide, we decide as a team. 3 nods. Unified. The oldest promise they had, renewed in a world that was already trying to break it. But promises in the DC universe were things that villains studied for structural weaknesses. And somewhere in Metropolis, in a tower that bore his name like a monument to ego, refined into strategy, Lex Luthor reviewed Yang's biometric data, cross-referenced it with Red Lantern ring trajectory calculations, and smiled the smile of a man who had just realized that the most powerful piece on the board didn't know she was in play. The Parademons came on a Thursday. No warning. No boom tube signature that Cyborg's sensors could detect in advance, because whoever had sent them had threaded the invasion force through 17 micro-portals distributed across Metropolis in a pattern specifically designed to overwhelm the Watchtower's detection grid. One moment, the city hummed with its usual impossible optimism. Commuters, street vendors, children pointing at the sky, hoping for a Superman sighting. The next, the sky tore open in 17 places, and hell fell through in insectoid armor. Ruby heard them before she saw them. The sound was wrong. Not the animal howl of Grimm, which was at least organic, at least connected to something natural, even if that nature was predatory darkness. Parademons screamed with the mechanical precision of weapons designed to terrify. Each shriek was calibrated, each wing beat synchronized. They descended on Metropolis in formations that spoke of a military intelligence behind them so vast and so old that it had optimized the mathematics of fear itself. She had crescent rows deployed before the first Parademon touched ground. Yang, South Quadrant. Blake, evacuate the subway entrance. Weiss, shields on the civilian cluster by the fountain. Ruby's voice snapped into command register. The voice that had held together a team through Beacon's fall, Haven's battle, Atlas's collapse, and the ever-after's madness. The voice that turned 4 young women into a single organism of coordinated lethality. They moved. Yang launched herself into the southern swarm with Embercelica blazing. Each shotgun blast punch detonating a Parademon's chest armor and sending it tumbling into its fellows. The first hit fed burn. The second hit amplified it. By the fifth Parademon, Yang's hair was blazing gold, and her fists were hitting hard enough to create shockwaves that shattered windows in a 2-block radius. She was laughing, the fierce, wild laugh of a woman whose body was designed to turn violence into more violence. And deep in her chest, the red warmth pulsed with approval. Blake became shadow. Gamble Shroud's ribbon sliced through Parademon wings with surgical precision, grounding them for Yang's follow-up strikes. Her shadow clones absorbed energy blasts that would have killed unshielded civilians, each clone dissolving into dark mist and reforming as Blake repositioned with a fluidity that made Nightwing, and watching through Bat computer feeds, pause his own Gotham patrol to study her methodology. She moved between the monsters like a rumor, never where they expected, always where they couldn't afford her to be. Weiss planted herself between 37 civilians and the advancing horde. Mertenaster's dust chamber rotated to ice, and she carved glyphs into the air with the focused artistry of a concert violinist playing through an earthquake. Ice walls erupted from the ground. Gravity glyphs pinned diving parademons to the pavement. Time dilation glyphs accelerated RWBY's already blinding speed as the team leader scythed through aerial formations with Crescent Rose singing its high-caliber death song. For 4 minutes, Team RWBY held Metropolis. Then Superman arrived, and RWBY understood scale. He came through the Parademon swarm like light through glass, not fighting them so much as existing through them, heat vision carving surgical lines through formations, each line accounting for civilian positions behind the targets with a spatial awareness that operated at speeds RWBY's eyes couldn't track. He caught a falling bus one-handed, set it down gently, and vaporized 6 Parademons in the same motion. Wonder Woman followed, sword drawn, each strike removing a Parademon from existence with the economical grace of a woman who'd been fighting wars since before Remnant's calendar began. Flash appeared as a streak of lightning, evacuating 3 city blocks of civilians in the time it took RWBY to reload. This was the Justice League, not 4 huntresses improvising brilliantly against local threats, but gods exercising precisely calibrated power against an invasion they'd repelled before. The gap between Team RWBY's desperate competence and the League's practiced dominance was the gap between a campfire and a sun. RWBY felt it, the inadequacy, the realization that everything Team RWBY had given, everything they were capable of giving, amounted to a holding action in a world where holding actions were handled by people who could bench press continents. And then the general arrived. The boom tube that delivered Kalibak, son of Darkseid, was not a micro-portal. It was a wound in reality 50 feet across, and the thing that stepped through it made every Parademon seem like the mindless drone it was. Kalibak stood 8 feet tall, armored in apocalypse war metal, carrying a beta club that crackled with energy, RWBY's aura identified as fundamentally hostile to life itself. His face was his father's face rendered in brutal youth. The same stone-carved cruelty, the same absolute certainty that everything weaker than himself existed only as raw material for his will. He backhanded Superman. The Man of Steel flew 3 city blocks and through 2 buildings. RWBY watched it happen, and her brain simply refused to process it because Superman was the benchmark. Superman was the ceiling. Superman was the most powerful being she'd encountered in this universe, and this monster had swatted him aside like a child's toy. Kalibak turned, his eyes burning with apocalypse fire, the same fire that powered the anti-life equation's foundational mathematics, swept the battlefield and found RWBY. Found her silver eyes, and then something in his expression changed from battle fury to recognition. The silver-eyed one, Kalibak rumbled. Father was right. She burns with the old light. He moved toward her. Wonder Woman intercepted, sword meeting Beta Club in a detonation that cratered the street. But Kalibak was fighting through her, not stopping, his attention locked on RWBY with a focus that transcended tactical assessment. This was retrieval. He'd come for her specifically. The Parademon invasion was cover. RWBY understood in a flash of intuition sharper than any of Weiss's analysis. Darkseid knew about Silver Eyes. Somehow, across whatever intelligence network spanned Apocalypse and the broader cosmos, and the Lord of Tyranny had learned that an extra-dimensional girl carried within her the power to obliterate creatures of darkness, and in a universe where Darkseid's forces were darkness incarnate, that power represented something between ultimate weapon and existential threat. He wanted her. Recruited or destroyed, it didn't matter. Either outcome served Apocalypse. Kalibak broke through Wonder Woman's guard. Diana staggered, a sight so rare that Flash stopped evacuating civilians to stare, and Kalibak's Beta Club descended toward RWBY with the inevitability of an avalanche. Yang intercepted. Ember Celica caught the Beta Club's shaft. The impact traveled through Yang's arms, into her core, and burn ignited with an intensity that cracked the pavement beneath her feet. Her eyes blazed red, her hair erupted in golden fire. The kinetic force of a blow that had staggered Wonder Woman of Themyscira poured into Yang Xiao Long's semblance and became hers. She threw the club aside, punched Kalibak in the jaw. The son of Darkseid went airborne. 3 feet. Only 3 feet. He was a new god, and Yang's amplified strength, however spectacular, was mortal force scaled up rather than divine force unleashed. But those 3 feet of involuntary backward movement bought RWBY the seconds she needed. She closed her eyes. Open them. Silver light erupted from RWBY Rose like a second sun being born. On Remnant, Silver Eyes destroyed Grimm, creatures of darkness, soulless predators, manifestations of an ancient god's malice. The power was specific, targeted, a weapon evolution had honed over millennia to counter one particular species of monster. In the DC universe, neither light did not discriminate. Every parademon in a 4-block radius disintegrated. Not defeated, disintegrated. Their apocalypse-forged armor, their biologically modified bodies, their programmed aggression, all of it came apart in silver radiance like shadow meeting dawn. The light hit Kalibak and he screamed, actually screamed, the son of Darkseid, the conqueror of worlds, screaming as silver fire burned through divine armor and found the darkness that Apocalypse had planted in his soul. He retreated. Boom tube. Gone, taking the surviving parademons with him in a withdrawal so abrupt it left sonic booms hanging in the air like punctuation marks. RWBY collapsed. Aura shattered. Silver Eyes depleted. She hit the cratered pavement and felt her teammates' hands catching her before the ground could. Above them, Superman floated back into view, is bruised but unbroken, and stared at the girl who had just done something to Apocalypse forces that he had never managed. Not defeated them, not driven them back, but erased them with a light that seemed to burn the concept of darkness itself. "What?" Superman said quietly. "Was that?" RWBY, barely conscious, managed 4 words before passing out. "It's what I do." RWBY woke in the Watchtower's medical bay with her aura at 11%, and her team fractured across 3 jurisdictions. She learned this in pieces, the way you learn bad news when you're too weak to demand it all at once. Weiss told her first, sitting rigid in the chair beside the medical bed with Merton-Aster across her knees and her composure held together with the desperate precision of someone who'd been trained never to show cracks, especially when the cracks ran deep. "Blake is in Gotham. Nightwing called. She went dark after the attack. She's investigating the Parademon incursion's ground-level coordination because she believes Luthor provided targeting data for the micro-portals. She's not answering comms." "And Yang?" Weiss's composure cracked. just a hairline fracture. Invisible only because RWBY had spent years learning to read the micro-expressions that Schnee upbringing tried to sand away. Hal Jordan has her in an isolation chamber on the Watchtower. Her emotional spectrum signature tripled during the fight. The red ring is 31 hours out and accelerating. Jordan says the only way to protect her is to dampen her emotional output, which means sedation, which means putting her to sleep against her will because her feelings are too dangerous. RWBY sat up. Her body protested. She overruled it. Where is she? RWBY, your aura. Where? Yang was in a room with green light. Hal Jordan had constructed a containment sphere. Not a prison, he insisted. Target shelter that filtered emotional spectrum energy and prevented Yang's rage signature from broadcasting across space like a lighthouse calling ships to shore. Yang sat inside it with her arms folded, Ember Celica confiscated for safety, her eyes alternating between lilac and red in a rhythm that matched the distant ring's approach. She looked up when RWBY entered. The grin was there, Yang's grin, the one that dared the universe to try harder, but beneath it, RWBY saw something she'd only seen once before. In their father's house on Patch, in the weeks after Yang lost her arm, when the girl who'd never stopped fighting simply stopped. They want to sedate me, Yang said. Put me under until they can intercept the ring. Jordan says if I'm unconscious, the ring can't bond because there's no active emotional engagement to latch on to. She held up her bare hands. He took my gauntlets, RWBY. He took Ember Celica because he's afraid I'll break out. Will you? I haven't decided yet. The red flickered in Yang's eyes. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to let whatever's coming come, because every time someone tells me my anger is too much, too dangerous, too powerful, I hear Dad telling me to calm down. I hear teachers telling me to control myself. I hear the entire world saying, Yang, you're too much. Her voice cracked. And now there's a universe confirming it. My feelings are literally a weapon someone wants to aim. RWBY knelt beside the containment sphere, pressed her hand against its surface. The green light was warm and hummed with willpower so focused it felt solid. You're not too much. You've never been too much, and we're going to figure this out. But I need you here. Conscious, fighting, not sedated because someone else decided your anger was their problem to manage. Jordan's not wrong, though. If that ring bonds, then we'll deal with it. Together, like always. RWBY turned to Hal, who stood outside the sphere with his ring glowing and his expression caught between duty and discomfort. Don't sedate her. Give us 24 hours to find another solution. If that ring reaches her, then you'll have a very angry huntress with an alien rage ring, and you'll also have her 3 teammates who have talked her down from worse. RWBY met his eyes. We've faced a god of darkness who could destroy our entire world. We held together. Trust that, or don't. But don't take her choice away. Hal studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lowered the sphere's dampening field by 30%. 24 hours. Not a minute more. RWBY left Yang with a promise and went looking for her team. What she found instead was the precise, surgical way the DC universe was pulling them apart. Blake was in Gotham. That much Weiss had said. What Weiss hadn't said, because Weiss didn't know, was that Blake had found exactly what she was looking for, and it was eating her alive. Nightwing had shown her the evidence first, buried in Gotham PD's corrupted servers, threaded through LexCorp's subsidiary shell companies, hidden behind 17 layers of legal insulation. Proof that Lex Luthor had sold Apocalypse targeting data for the Metropolis microportals. Not directly, never directly. Through intermediaries and cutouts and deniable channels that made the transaction technically legal under Earth's inadequate extra-dimensional threat legislation. Luthor had given Darkseid's forces the exact sensor blind spots in the Watchtower's detection grid, and in exchange, he'd received 3 Parademon corpses for biological research. Luthor had engineered the invasion that was cover for Kalibak's retrieval mission, the mission that targeted RWBY. Blake sat on a Gotham rooftop with this knowledge burning in her chest and thought about Adam Taurus, about how the White Fang's violence had been justified at first, legitimate resistance against genuine oppression, and how justification had become excuse, had become addiction, had become atrocity. She thought about the moment she'd left Adam, up to the moment she'd decided that fighting monsters by becoming one was not resistance but surrender. And she thought about how easy it would be to find Lex Luthor and end this. Not arrest him, not expose him, end it. Gamble's shroud was sharp enough. Blake was skilled enough. And in a world without aura, without huntsmen, where the most dangerous regular humans relied on body armor and security systems that a trained infiltrator from Remnant could bypass in her sleep, it would be terrifyingly easy. "You're thinking about it." Red Hood's voice came from behind her. Jason Todd, standing in the rain with his helmet glowing crimson, twin pistols holstered, the living proof that Batman's no-kill rule was a choice, not a necessity. "I can tell because I've had that exact expression every night for years. I'm not going to kill him. Not tonight, maybe. But you've done the math. You know how many people die because Luthor plays chess with alien invasions. You know that every legal system on this planet has failed to stop him. And you know, because you were a revolutionary, because you've held the cost-benefit analysis of violence in your hands and weighed it honestly, that one death could prevent thousands. Blake's grip tightened on Gamble's shroud. "You sound like someone I used to follow, someone who said the same things. He was wrong." Maybe. Or maybe he was right about the math and wrong about everything else. Red Hood sat beside her on the ledge. "I'm not recruiting you. I'm warning you. This city, this universe, it finds the fracture in everyone. Superman's fracture is hope without pragmatism. Batman's is control without trust. The mine is justice without restraint." He looked at her. "What's yours?" Blake stared at Gotham's rain-slicked sprawl and said nothing, because the answer was the one she'd spent years running from. Her fracture was conviction without boundaries, the willingness to burn everything for a cause she believed was just. Adam hadn't corrupted that impulse. He'd nurtured it. And it still lived in her, patient as a blade, waiting for a cause righteous enough to justify its edge. Meanwhile, Weiss sat in the House of Mystery with Zatanna and Constantine and faced her own fracture. "The summoning glyph you used during the Parademon attack," Constantine said. "You called 3 Beowulf constructs. Did you notice what happened to the third one?" Weiss had not noticed. She'd been focused on shielding civilians, directing ice dust barriers, to managing glyph placement across a combat zone that made the Battle of Haven look like a training exercise. The summons had been automatic. 3 Grimm spectral constructs to serve as mobile interceptors, while she focused on defense. Constantine placed a photograph on the table. It showed the 3rd Beowulf summon, captured by Watchtower satellite imaging, and Weiss's blood went cold. The construct was wrong. Its spectral blue light was shot through with veins of deep crimson. Its form was larger than she'd intended, its movements in the still frame image suggesting independent aggression rather than directed purpose, and its eyes were not the pale blue of her summons. They were red. True red. The red of Grimm on Remnant, yes, but also the red of something older and hungrier, something that had looked at Weiss's summoning portal and leaned through. "Neron," Constantine said. "One of Hell's landlords. His energy signature is all over that construct. When you opened the summoning channel during a crisis saturated with apocalypse energy, something in DC's Hell noticed the doorway and tested its hinges." He lit a cigarette. "It didn't get through. This time. But every time you summon in this universe, you're knocking on doors that things much worse than Grimm are waiting behind." Weiss looked at her hands. At Myrtenaster, at the power she'd fought her father, her family, her entire legacy to master and make her own. So I stopped summoning, she said flatly. I lose a third of my combat capability because this universe has things lurking in the dark that mine didn't. Or, Zatanna said gently, 'cause you learn to ward the channel, summon through protected glyphs that filter what comes through. It's possible. It's also difficult, and it requires training in a magical tradition your world never developed. She paused. It requires trust. Trust, the thing Weiss had given her father and had broken, given Ironwood and had shattered, given her team and had held, barely sometimes, by fingernails and stubbornness and the knowledge that without Ruby, Blake and Yang, she was just a rich girl with a sword and a legacy of exploitation. How long? Weiss asked. Weeks, maybe months, during which time your summoning is unreliable. 4 fractures, 4 agendas. Yang isolated by cosmic threat, Blake tempted by righteous violence, Weiss crippled by magical incompatibility, and Ruby carrying the knowledge that Darkseid himself wanted her, that her silver eyes had painted a target on her soul visible from Apocalypse, and that the team she'd held together through apocalypse after apocalypse was being pulled apart by a universe that specialized in breaking heroes. Ruby sat alone in the Watchtower medical bay, aura slowly regenerating, and felt the weight of leadership settle on her shoulders like a physical thing. Heavier here than on Remnant, because on Remnant, the enemy had been darkness, and darkness was simple. Here, the enemies wore every face. Cosmic tyrant, corporate genius, government handler, alien ring, demonic parasite, and the most insidious enemy of all, the whisper that said, "You're not enough for this world." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were silver. Not the eruption of combat power. Something quieter. A glow, barely visible, and like moonlight remembered rather than seen. The light that had destroyed parademons, that Darkseid coveted, that made Ruby Rose significant in a universe of gods. "Enough," she said to the empty room. "I'm getting my team back." Ruby Rose moved through the Watchtower with Crescent Rose on her back, and a plan that Batman would have called reckless, and Yang would have called Tuesday. She went to Yang first because Yang was closest, and because the red glow pulsing beneath her sister's skin was a clock counting down, and Ruby had never been good at watching clocks. The isolation chamber's green walls hummed with Hal Jordan's willpower. Yang sat inside, legs crossed, eyes closed, hands resting on her knees in a meditative posture that Blake had taught her during the long weeks after the fall of Beacon. The red flickered beneath her eyelids. Ruby pressed her hand against the barrier. Yang, eyes opened, lilac, fighting red. "You look terrible. My aura's at 31% and I'm about to do something stupid." "Oh, good. I was bored." Yang stood. The red flared. The containment sphere sensors screamed warnings that Hal Jordan heard from 3 corridors away. "What's the plan?" "Get Blake. Get Weiss. Get back here. Fight whatever Darkseid sends next as a team, not as 4 people being managed by 4 different factions." "Jordan won't let me out. The ring is 16 hours away." "I know." Ruby pressed Crescent Rose's barrel against the containment sphere. She'd loaded gravity dust, 3 of their 6 remaining rounds, an expenditure that made the strategist in her cringe and the leader in her accept as necessary cost. "I'm not asking Jordan's permission." The gravity dust round hit the containment sphere and reality folded. Green light fractured. Willpower constructs were powerful, but they were energy. Not and gravity dust didn't care about the emotional spectrum. It cared about mass and force and the fundamental architecture of space-time. The sphere crumpled inward, collapsed, and Yang stepped through the gap with Ember Silica, retrieved from the Watchtower armory 15 minutes ago by a very guilty-looking Flash who owed Ruby a favor after she'd complimented his running form, already deploying around her fists. Hal Jordan arrived 11 seconds later, ring blazing, He found two sisters standing shoulder to shoulder, one armed with a scythe loaded with elemental ammunition too valuable to waste, the other with gauntlets primed and rage barely leashed, and an alien ring screaming toward her through the void. "Ruby, this isn't..." 16 hours. That's how long until the ring arrives. I need 8 of those hours to get my team back together and prepare for whatever Kalibak's bringing next, because the Parademon attack was a retrieval mission, and retrieval missions that fail get followed by retrieval missions that don't. You can help us, or you can fight us, and if you fight us, you'll win because you're a Green Lantern and we're 2 huntresses running on fumes. Ruby's silver eyes met his. But you'll have to explain to Superman why you imprisoned 2 girls whose only crime was refusing to be separated. Hal's ring dimmed. Not a conscious choice. An involuntary response to the recognition that the girl in front of him was right, and his ring, powered by willpower, responded to truth the way a compass responded to north. 8 hours, he said, and I'm coming with you to Gotham. Gotham's rain hadn't stopped. Blake perched on the same rooftop where Red Hood had laid out the mathematics of justified killing, and she was halfway through a plan to infiltrate LexCorp Tower when the sound of a scythe deploying made her turn. Ruby stood on the fire escape behind her, Yang on the rooftop edge, grinning, Hal Jordan hovering above, green light casting emerald shadows across wet concrete. "Come home," Ruby said simply. Blake looked at her team leader, looked at the LexCorp dossier in her hand, looked at the rain falling on Gotham and thought about Adam and violence and the line between justice and vengeance that everyone in this universe seemed to draw in different places. Luthor engineered the Parademon attack. He sold targeting data to Apocalypse. He put you in danger to acquire alien technology. Blake's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. I can stop him. Permanently. You could, Ruby agreed. And then what? You become what you ran from. You become what Adam became. You solve one problem by creating the person who creates worse problems. That's not justice, Blake. That's surrender. Ruby stepped closer. I need you. Not because we can't fight without you. We can, badly, but we can. I need you, because without you, I lose the person who reminds me that fighting smart matters more than fighting hard. That shadows aren't evil. They're where you find the truth. Come home. The rain fell. Somewhere in Gotham, a siren wailed. Blake looked at the dossier one more time. She let it go. The wind took it. Gotham's rain dissolved it. Okay, Blake said. Let's get Weiss. The House of Mystery opened its door for them, yes, which Constantine said it rarely did for uninvited guests, and which Zatanna said it always did for people whose story it wanted to see if finished. Weiss was in the library, surrounded by warding diagrams and spell theory texts, Mertenaster, across a table covered in notes written in her precise architectural handwriting. She looked up, saw her team. Her composure cracked. Not a hairline fracture this time, but a genuine break. Emotion flooding through like water through a shattered dam. She reassembled it in 2 seconds because she was Weiss Schnee, and 2 seconds of visible emotion was already an unacceptable indulgence. But those 2 seconds told Ruby everything she needed to know. We're leaving, Ruby said. Together. Now. My summoning is compromised. Constantine says a lot of things. Zatanna says your wards need months. We don't have months. We have... Ruby checked the Watchtower communicator. 14 hours before a red lantern ring reaches Yang, and an unknown amount of time before Darkseid sends something worse than Kalibak. I need you at full capacity with whatever you can bring. Weiss stood, collected Mertenaster. My summoning may open channels to hostile entities. Then don't summon unless we're desperate enough that hostile entities are an improvement over what we're already fighting. Ruby looked at each of her teammates. We're out of time. We're almost out of dust. We're in a universe where gods punch each other through buildings and an actual devil from an actual hell planet wants to kidnap me for my eyes. and in roughly 14 hours, Aunt Yang either bonds with an alien rage ring, or we figure out something nobody else in this universe has figured out. So, Standard Tuesday, Yang said. Standard Tuesday, RWBY confirmed. They returned to the Watchtower at dawn. Hal Jordan briefed Superman and Batman, who reacted in characteristically opposite ways. Superman with hope, Batman with contingencies. Wonder Woman sharpened her sword and said nothing, which meant she was preparing for the version of events where words became irrelevant. The Red Lantern ring entered Earth's atmosphere at 11:47 a.m., 14 hours ahead of Hal's revised estimate, because rage does not respect timetables. It streaked across the sky like a burning coal, visible to every sensor on the Watchtower. And when it sang a song that only Yang could hear, a song of justified fury and righteous destruction, and the promise that she would never have to hold back again. Yang stood on the Watchtower observation deck, team beside her, Justice League behind her, and watched it come. "RWBY," she said quietly. "If it bonds, if I lose myself, you know what to do. It won't come to that, but if it does." RWBY's hand found Yang's. Squeezed. "Silver eyes can destroy creatures of darkness, and a ring that turns my sister into something she's not? That's the darkest thing I can imagine." The ring hit the Watchtower's shields and punched through them like they were paper. It screamed through corridors, past Green Lantern barriers, Hal threw up and Wonder Woman's bracelets and Batman's EMP charges. It was drawn by a signal so pure and powerful that nothing in the universe could stop its bonding trajectory. It reached Yang, and Yang caught it, not with her hand, with her aura. The golden light that was her soul's projection flared to full intensity. Not burn, not rage, not the red that had been building for days, but the pure, undiluted manifestation of Yang Xiao Long's complete self. Protective older sister, loyal partner, fierce friend, woman who had lost everything and rebuilt herself, not through anger, but through love so stubborn it looked like anger from the outside. The ring hit Yang's aura and stopped, suspended, screaming. It tried to bond and found not the pure rage it expected, but something infinitely more complex. Anger, yes, but anger braided with love and grief and humor and stubbornness and the specific and unbreakable determination of a woman who had decided, on a rooftop on Patch at age 17, that she would never stop fighting for the people she loved, and her anger was in service of that love, not the other way around. "I don't need you," Yang told the ring. Her eyes blazed, not red, not lilac, but gold, pure, burning gold. "I've got something better." She crushed it. Ember Celica closed around the Red Lantern ring and burn activated, absorbing the ring's energy, converting cosmic rage into kinetic force that traveled up Yang's arm and into her core and emerged as a single, devastating pulse that shattered every window on the observation deck and knocked Hal Jordan off his feet. The ring crumbled. Red fragments fell through Yang's fingers like dying embers. The song stopped. In the silence that followed, Hal Jordan stared at the woman who had just done something no being in the history of the emotional spectrum had ever accomplished. Rejected and destroyed a Red Lantern ring through sheer force of emotional complexity, and whispered, "That's impossible." "She does that a lot," RWBY said. The victory lasted 9 seconds. Then Cyborg's mother box screamed, and the Watchtower sensors lit with a signature so massive it dwarfed the Parademon invasion the way an ocean dwarfs a puddle. A boom tube the size of a city block was opening over Metropolis, and through it came not Parademons, not Kalibak, but Steppenwolf, Darkseid's general conqueror of 37 worlds, carrying an axe forged in apocalypse fire, and behind him an army large enough to darken the sun. He spoke one sentence and broadcast on every frequency. "Darkseid commands the silver-eyed girl. Surrender her, or your world joins the 37. RWBY looked at her team. Her team looked at her, And in that moment, with the fate of a world that wasn't theirs hanging in the balance, Team RWBY did what Team RWBY always did. They chose to fight. Metropolis became a war zone in the time it took RWBY to fall from the Watchtower. She jumped, not reckless, calculated the way every decision she made in combat was calculated despite appearances. Petal Burst carried her downward in a spiral of crimson roses, crescent rows extended to full scythe configuration, and the city that Superman had built into a monument of hope stretched below her like a patient waiting for surgery. Apocalypse forces poured through the boom tube in columns that darkened the sky. Not just parademons this time, but Apocalypse ground troops, armored and disciplined, the kind of soldiers you sent when you wanted a world conquered rather than terrorized. Steppenwolf stood at the invasion's vanguard, axe resting on his shoulder with the casual confidence of someone who had ended civilizations before breakfast. His armor moved with him like a living thing. It was a living thing. New god technology bonded to Apocalypse metallurgy, responsive to his emotional state, which was currently serene in the specific way that apex predators are serene when surveying prey. The Justice League met the invasion with everything. Superman hit the front line like a guided missile, heat vision cutting trenches through parademon formations. Wonder Woman engaged Steppenwolf directly, sword against axe, the impact of each blow creating shockwaves that shattered windows for blocks. Batman coordinated from the Watchtower, directing League resources with the cold precision of a general who understood that this battle would be won in positioning and strategy, not raw power. Flash evacuated civilians at speeds that turned him into a golden blur. Hal Jordan constructed orbital defense platforms. Aquaman brought Atlantean military assets through underwater boom tubes. Cyborg fought Apocalypse technology with mother box integration, hacking enemy communications and disrupting troop coordination. It wasn't enough. Steppenwolf had fought Wonder Woman before. He knew her patterns, her tells, the way she favored her left side after extended combat. He adapted. Pressed. Diana's sword arm trembled as she blocked a blow that would have split a mountain. Superman dove to assist, and Steppenwolf's reserves intercepted. Elite Apocalypse warriors, specifically trained to engage Kryptonians, armed with weapons that emitted targeted kryptonite radiation synthesized from data Darkseid scientists had collected across 37 conquered worlds. Superman fell to one knee. A green light burned against his skin. Diana fought alone against a general who outweighed her by 300 pounds and had conquered more worlds than she'd visited. Team RWBY hit the battlefield like a natural disaster with coordination. They had 7 dust rounds remaining. 7. RWBY had divided them with the mathematical precision of a commander who understood that every resource was final. 2 fire, 2 ice, 1 lightning, 1 gravity, 1 hard light. 7 shots to help defend a world that was not their own against an army that had conquered 37. Blake struck first. Gamble's Shroud's ribbon caught the support structure of an Apocalypse siege tower, a mobile platform directing ground troop formations, and Blake swung through its interior like a shadow given purpose, and her clones absorbing plasma fire while the real Blake severed command relays with her katana. The tower listed, crashed, took 40 troops with it. Nightwing, fighting on the street below, looked up and grinned. Weiss planted Mertenaster and carved the largest glyph array she'd ever attempted. No summoning she'd promised RWBY, but her other glyphs were devastating at scale. Time dilation fields accelerated Justice League members who passed through them, giving Flash an extra edge that turned him from lightning into something physics couldn't describe. Gravity glyphs pinned advancing Apocalypse columns to the ground, and ice dust, one of 2 remaining rounds, created barriers that channeled enemy forces into killing corridors where League heavy hitters waited. And Yang waded into the thickest concentration of enemy forces and became a golden Apocalypse. Without the Red Lantern ring's corruption, but with Byrne operating at full capacity, every hit she absorbed from Apocalypse weapons fed back into fists that cracked power armor and sent soldiers flying. She fought alongside Wonder Woman in a pairing that shouldn't have worked, Amazon warrior goddess and brawler from another dimension, but their combat philosophies synced with terrifying naturalism. Diana's sword found gaps. Yang's fists exploited them. They carved a path toward Steppenwolf that left broken Apocalypse steel in their wake. RWBY ran. Petal Burst propelled her across the battlefield in bursts of crimson speed that weren't flash-fast, but were unpredictable in ways pure speed wasn't. She dissolved and reformed, appeared and vanished. Crescent Rose's high-caliber rounds picking off aerial threats with the mechanical precision of the weapons prodigy she'd been since childhood. She moved towards Steppenwolf because the equation was simple. Darkseid wanted her eyes. Steppenwolf was here to take them, and if she could end the General, she could end the invasion's command structure. It took her 4 minutes to reach him. 4 minutes of continuous combat across a destroyed city, her aura depleting with every hit she couldn't dodge. Crescent Rose eating through ammunition she couldn't replace. By the time she faced Steppenwolf directly, she had 1 round left, the hard light dust, and her aura was at 19%. Steppenwolf looked down at her with something between amusement and genuine respect. "You came to me. Bold. Non-Darkseid said you would. Said the silver-eyed ones are drawn to darkness by their nature. They cannot help but fight it." "That's not a flaw," RWBY said. "That's the point." She fired the hard light round. The dust detonated against Steppenwolf's armor and created a crystalline cage of solidified light that locked his axe arm in place for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough. Yang and Diana hit him simultaneously from opposite sides. Yang's Byrne-amplified uppercut from below, Diana's God-killer sword from above, and Steppenwolf staggered. RWBY closed the distance. Crescent Rose's blade hooked behind Steppenwolf's knee. She pulled with everything she had. Mechanical advantage, leverage, the physics she'd loved since building her first weapon, and the General's leg buckled. He went to 1 knee, an eye level with a girl who weighed 120 pounds and had just toppled a god. She opened her eyes. Silver light again. But this time, RWBY didn't unleash it as a blast. She'd learned from the first time, the uncontrolled eruption that had drained her completely and left her helpless. This time, she focused. Narrowed the beam. Poured every ounce of will she possessed into a concentrated lance of silver radiance that hit Steppenwolf's chest plate and burned through Apocalypse metal like a torch through ice. He screamed, staggered upright. His armor, living, adaptive, the pride of Darkseid's forges, rejected the silver light by shedding its outer layer entirely, leaving Steppenwolf diminished, unarmored across his torso, bleeding energy that dissipated like black smoke in sunlight. "Sir, retreat!" Steppenwolf snarled into his comm systems, and the word carried the humiliation of a conqueror who had never said it before. The boom tube reopened. Apocalypse forces withdrew with the disciplined efficiency of a military that had practiced retreat as carefully as advance, because Darkseid's armies were not mindless. They were strategic, and a tactical withdrawal from one world meant nothing when 37 others already knelt. Steppenwolf paused at the boom tube's threshold, looked back at RWBY, at the 4 girls standing in the wreckage of his failed conquest, bloodied, exhausted, out of dust, out of aura reserves, held together by nothing except each other. "Darkseid will come himself," Steppenwolf said, "and when he does, your eyes will not be enough." He stepped through. The boom tube sealed. Metropolis fell silent except for the sound of settling rubble and, somewhere distant, a child crying. RWBY's knees buckled. Weiss caught her left side. Blake caught her right. Yang stood behind her, hand on her shoulder, and for a moment, the 4 of them held each other upright in the ruins of a city that wasn't theirs. on a world that wasn't theirs, in a universe that had tried to break them apart and discovered what everyone who'd tried before had discovered. The Team RWBY's bond was not a convenience or a strategy or a weakness to exploit. It was the weapon. It had always been the weapon. Superman landed beside them. His suit was torn. Kryptonite burns marked his skin. He looked at RWBY with an expression she'd seen once before, on Professor Ozpin's face, the day he'd accepted her into Beacon 2 years early. Not pity, not assessment, so recognition. "You had no obligation to this world," Superman said. "You spent your last resources defending people you've never met." "That's what huntresses do," RWBY said. "Doesn't matter which world." Batman's voice came through the comm, stripped of its usual gravel, carrying something that might have been respect, if respect were a language Batman spoke fluently. "The Apocalypse forces are fully withdrawn. Steppenwolf's army has retreated through all boom tube access points. Planetary defense status secured." A pause. Team RWBY performed above projected parameters. Was that a compliment? Yang asked. "It was an observation," Batman said. "Don't get used to it." Wonder Woman sheathed her sword. She was bleeding from a cut above her eye that she hadn't bothered to acknowledge, and she looked at Yang with the expression of a warrior who'd found an equal in unexpected form. "You fight like an Amazon. I fight like me." Yang grinned, and this time the grin reached her eyes, pure lilac without a trace of red. "But I'll take that." The sun broke through the smoke over Metropolis. Golden light fell across 4 huntresses standing in the crater their victory had carved, and for a moment, the city that symbolized hope looked at them and saw exactly what Superman had always wanted humanity to see when they looked up. Not gods, not saviors, but people who chose to stand between darkness and everyone else. Not because they were powerful enough, but because they refused to be anywhere else. The Watchtower's observation deck was quiet in the hours after the battle. Earth turned below, and blue and white and impossibly resilient, and Team RWBY stood at the window where gods usually kept their vigil. Superman had offered Justice League communicators, not membership, not yet, but the open channel that meant the League considered them allies rather than anomalies. Batman had offered something rarer, access to the Batcomputer's dimensional research archives, and a promise to dedicate resources to finding a path back to Remnant. Whether that promise came from compassion or from a desire to remove 4 unpredictable variables from his contingency planning, RWBY didn't ask. They were out of dust. Every vial spent, every round fired, every crystal of elemental power that had connected them to Remnant burned away in defense of a world that had tried to pull them apart before it let them save it. And they would need to adapt. New ammunition, new techniques, new ways of fighting that didn't rely on resources this universe couldn't provide. But they were together. That was the weapon. That had always been the weapon. Steppenwolf's warning lingered. Darkseid will come himself. And when the Lord of Apocalypse turned his attention fully toward the silver-eyed girl and her team, the battle for Metropolis would look like a skirmish. RWBY knew this. Her team knew this. Somewhere in the cosmos, on a throne carved from the screams of conquered worlds, Darkseid was already preparing. RWBY pressed her hand against the observation window. Below, Metropolis was rebuilding. It always rebuilt. "We stay," she said. Not a question. 3 voices, immediate. "We stay." Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.